A, E, I, and O. So, and we're going to put them in this order. A, E, I, and O. Okay. And so all A statements are going to be universal affirmatives, or all universal affirmatives. We're just going to abbreviate that as an A statement. A universal negative, no SRP, are going to be the E statements. A particular affirmative, some SRP, is going to be an I, and all particular negatives will be O statements. And last time we established a relationship between the AO and the IE statements. And what was that relationship? That was one of contradiction, that's right. Okay, so in this we're saying you cannot have true, and you cannot have false, right? If one is true, the other is false, and vice versa. I'll just do it that way, right?
Well, could it be, I mean, you could have two falses, right?
No?
You're talking about, okay, never mind, I'm thinking in general.
Right, we'll deal with those because we're going to start doing other relationships between, but in the corners, the opposite diagonal corners, that is a relationship of contradiction. If you have an A statement and an O statement, they are in contradiction when we have the four categoricals, okay? So, now we're going to be getting into the relationships between the A and the E. What can we say about these? The I and the O's, and the affirmatives and negatives. So let's jump into the first section on page 101. Actually, let me ask you this before we go on. Is everybody clear on this? This all makes sense? Anything you need me to jump into again on this?
Can you briefly explain SRP?
SRP? Some SRP or all SRP? So the S and the P just simply stand for any subject or any predicate. This is going to be a formula, right? Math formula in English, right? It doesn't matter what your subject matter is or your predicate. We're going to take common statements and we're going to make them into one of these four forms. So we're going to have essentially four formulas to work with in logic. Obviously, we can't make a nonsense statement into a statement. If it's absurd, if it doesn't make any sense at all, we can't put it into this. Or a question, we can't test a question's truth value. So we're only dealing with statements and common language that can be changed by making it into one of these statements. Then we can test it for its truth value, its logical coherence, and so forth. And that's where we're going with this. Does that answer what you were getting at? Okay. All right. So lesson 15 on page 101 is where we're going to pick up. Okay. A contrary relationship is that which exists between the universal statements A and E. In this relationship, it is not possible for both statements to be true. Is it possible, however, for both to be false? For example, here are two contrary statements. All astronauts are men. No astronauts are men. Now, Could both of those be true at the same time? We'll just pause there, right? They couldn't both be true, so we would have a contradiction. But, you're going to abbreviate it to the all ARM and no ARM. So it is not possible for both of these statements to be true. If all astronauts are men, then it is false that none are. If none are men, then it is false that all are. At the same time, it is possible for both to be false. Consider the fact that some space shuttle astronauts were women and others were men. In such a situation, both statements are clearly false. It is important to remember the distinction between contradiction and contrariety. Contradictory statements cannot both be true at the same time and cannot be false at the same time. With contrariety, both cannot be true simultaneously, but both can be false at the same time. Okay, so let's do this. So contrariety, did I spell that right? Contrariety exists between A and E statements, and in this case, we could have both of these could be false, but they cannot both be true at the same time. If no, the example, no astronauts are men is the true statement, if that's true, this could never be true. If none of them are men, you couldn't have it all men, all astronauts are men at the same time, right? They could never both be true. But it's possible that rather than having these two in conjunction, the reality is this situation down here, where some are and some are not. Okay, so that's the contrariety relationship. Now, this is going to be a little bit rough to try to hold together all these relationships that we're going to get, but this is going to be fun because you're going to be able to work through this square in just a moment in this next section here that we're going to get at. Okay, so picking up on the next paragraph, the relationship of contrariety is represented at the top horizontal line of the square of opposition. When the terms are the same, all A and E statements are contrary. Here is another example. All snakes are green reptiles, and no snakes are green reptiles. We would abbreviate that as all SRG, no SRG. You should be able to see that while both of these statements may be false, they cannot both be true. We will now turn to an attempt to identify the relationship in a discussion between two Christians who differ on the mode of baptism. Jones argues vigorously, I maintain that all the baptisms in the New Testament were by immersion. Smith was not at all daunted and said, I maintain that nobody in the New Testament was baptized by immersion. How should we understand the dispute? Is it a contradiction or is it a clash of contrary statements? Let's break their assertions down. Jones says, all the baptisms in the New Testament were by immersion. We're going to reduce that to all New Testament baptisms were immersions. All B were I. And then nobody in the New Testament was baptized by immersion. That's going to be no New Testament baptisms were immersion. And then that's going to be further reduced to our formula. No B were I. Everybody sees how we got there? Okay. Now we place both statements on the square of opposition. You see, the first is an A statement and the second is an E statement. This means necessarily that Smith and Jones cannot both be correct. The two positions exclude one another. It is possible, however, for both to be wrong. What if the New Testament teaches that two modes of baptism were used? This is not an assertion that it does so, but rather a reminder that the logical possibility exists. Then both Smith and Jones would be wrong. They could both be false, right? False views. What would the situation be if Smith maintained that some baptisms were not immersions? His statement would then be some be were not I. This would be a relationship of contradiction. If all baptisms were immersion is true, then some baptisms were not is false. So here we have this relationship here of contradiction, right? Now again, you're right now, the A-E-I-O statements may be a little fuzzy, but eventually that'll get crisped up in your thinking as you work through this and wrestle through this and repeat it. So if some baptisms were not immersion is true, then all baptisms were immersion has to be false. In this case, either Jones or Smith must be correct. Both could be wrong. So, do you follow the way he's arguing this? I'm not sure if you see it clearly or if you're confused. Don't be ashamed to say if you don't get it, we'll walk through it. If it's just abundantly clear, that's refreshing that this is just pedestrian to you, right? So simple, an Orthodox Presbyterian could get it. All right. It may seem initially that the clash of all and no is more fundamental than the clash of all and some not. This is not the case. In a clash between all and no, both can share a claim to falsehood, but between all and some not, one of them must be true and the other must be false. Consider one more example. Sally is saying that all the girls in the high school are stuck up and proud, all GRP. Jane thinks that Sally is confused and that none of them are. But if that is true, that only some of the girls are proud, then both Sally and Jane are wrong. Both cannot be right, but both can be wrong. Follow? Easy cheesy? Okay, so A and E statements have a relationship of contrariety. Both cannot be true, but both can be false. This should not be confused with the relationship of contradiction, where both cannot be true and both cannot be false. Okay? Now that you have this understanding of contrariety, there is a relationship of subcontrariety. And just so you know, you Latin, super is above, right? So super is going to be on the top, and sub is going to be below, right? So if you have those prefixes clear, subcontrariety now is going to be dealing with the lower level. Subcontrariety is a relationship that exists between I and O statements. It is represented by a horizontal line on the bottom of the square of opposition. It is possible for both I statements and O statements to be true, but it is not possible for both to be false. The relationship of subcontrariety is the opposite of contrariety as seen by comparing them side by side. So let's just draw this little arrow in, subcontrariety. I hope I'm spelling this all right. And this is where both can be true. You probably can't see this. But both cannot be false. Are you able to see all of that? I put it up here and it was so high. I felt like it was awkward to be doing that, so I apologize if I'm getting just below your eyesight on this one. Okay, so In contrariety, both statements cannot be true, but they can both be false. Subcontrariety, both statements can be true, but they cannot both be false. For example, here are an I and O statement, respectively. Some preachers are boring speakers. Some preachers are not boring speakers. Could both of those be true at the same time? Yeah. Think about this for a moment. Is it possible for both these statements to be true? Is the world big enough to contain preachers who are not boring as well as those who are? Certainly Pastor Jones, for example, may be as boring as they come, while Pastor Smith is not at all that boring, or not at all boring. Is it possible for both statements to be false at the same time? No, it is not. Think for a moment. If it is false that some preachers are boring, this is the same thing as saying that no preachers are boring. So if you say some preachers are boring, we've already established this. If that is false, this one must be true, right? By way of contradiction. See how we're now starting to get a little grid? This is our abacus, right? This is our mathematical map, so to speak. If this is true, this must be false, right? So, and if no preachers are boring, then certainly some preachers are not boring, because all preachers are not boring. So if no preachers are boring is true, right? We can't have both of these true at the same time, right? So that's going to be false. Okay, so another example. Some students are intelligent, some students are not intelligent. To see that both of these can be true is not difficult. There will perhaps be more difficulty in understanding why both cannot be false. It may help to draw the statements on the square of opposition, then follow through this argument step by step. So let's do this. If it is false that some students are not intelligent, this is our false statement, then that is the same as saying that all students are intelligent by way of contradiction. Right? Step 2, if all students are intelligent, then it must be true that some students are intelligent by way of implication. So if all students are intelligent is true, then some students are intelligent by implication. If this is true, think of your species Genesis relationship. If it's true at the bigger level, it's going to be true of the particulars, right? If all students are intelligent is true, isn't it also going to be true that some students are intelligent? Because that's a smaller class of all. Okay? And if it is true that some students are intelligent, then it cannot be false that some are, by the laws of thought. If it is true that some students are intelligent, now we have an I statement, then by the laws of thought, so in this case, both of these two cannot be false at the same time. Remember, we started here. If this is false, that's true, this must be true, therefore these two cannot both be false at the same time. That one ends up being true. Do you follow how he got there? You have to be honest with me. Okay, I'm going to assume you get it. Okay, you must be brighter than I was, because the first time I was a little slow on getting some of this, but you'll get it. Okay, so let's go through exercise 15. Analyze the following paragraphs. Isolate the related terms and put them into categorical form. Assign abbreviations to the terms, place them on the square of opposition, and determine their relationship. One will show the relationship of contradiction, one the relationship of contrariety, and one subcontrariety. Show your work. Okay, so Johnny sneered at Billy. So he said, all third graders are stupid. Billy shouted back, ineffectively countering Johnny's point, that's not true, none of them are. So what relationship what's the Billy's statement, all third graders are stupid. What A-E-I-O? That's an A statement, right? All SRP. And then no SRP is Johnny's. An E statement. So the relationship between the two is one of contrariety. Yeah, that's a, or actually contrariety. I think I've been saying contrariety. There's no yeah, I spelled it wrong. Contrariety, yeah, and contrariety. I missed an R in both. Okay. Smith said pro-lifers don't care about children who are already born. All they care about is their stupid political agenda. Jones disagreed by saying, no, there are many pro-lifers who are involved in caring for children. So what is Smith's, how do we...
First one's no.
Yeah, pro-lifers don't care about children. Is he talking about some pro-lifers or all pro-lifers? That's all. So that's going to be a universal category. And they don't care about stupid political, they don't care about children, right? So it's a negative. So in this case, no pro-lifers are children carers, right? So no SRP or no PRC, if you want to put it that way.
What would that be?
Huh?
What would that be? Particular statement?
That's no. The first one, Smith's, is pro-lifers don't care about children who are already born. All they care about is their stupid political agenda. So they're all political agenda, stupid political agenda believers, if you want. But
I'm saying the second statement could be.
we're just working with the first one right now. So the first one is an E statement, correct? Everybody sees that. Smith's statement. Huh? I couldn't understand. I just got no.
He's saying no is universal.
Yeah, no is a universal. And so it's a universal affirmative they don't care about. So the no is going to go, the don't is going to carry the idea of the negative. They don't care. So no pro-lifer is a child carer. It would be the way we're going to put it into the statement form. Okay? All right, so now Jones's statement, no, there are many pro-lifers who are involved in caring for children. What is he going to say? That's going to be some do care about children, so it's going to be a particular affirmative, right? And a particular affirmative is an I statement. Now, I statements and E statements is a relationship of what? Contradiction. Okay. 3, some people I know are always complaining about their jobs. They never seem to quit. Of course, not everyone complains. Okay, so some people I know are always complaining about their jobs. So that's going to be what? Some SRP. That's a particular affirmative. And then the statement in conjunction with that is, they never seem to quit. Of course, not everyone complains. Or just, we would deal with the not everyone complains.
So if it says some people, then some S are not P.
Some S are not P. That's right.
That would be an O statement.
That's an O statement. Okay, so what's the relationship between I and O?
Subcontractor.
Okay, and without looking at the chart, can both of those be true at the same time? They could both be true, but they can't both be false. Okay? You got one more relationship or one more set of relationships to get. Okay. The next chapter on page 109 is sub-implication. In the relationship of sub-implication, the truth of a particular statement can be inferred from the truth of the universal with the same quality. So, the universals that are affirmative and the universal with the negatives. So, or actually, the universal with its corresponding negative statement. So we're talking A to I and E to O. Okay? If a statement is true, if an A statement is true, then its corresponding I statement must be true. If an E statement is true, then its corresponding O statement must be true. What follows is an example of sub-implication. So in this case, sub-implication is a big word, but all we're doing is we're saying, can we infer something about what is below it? Sub-implication. Sub-implication. So if this is true, then this one must be true also. Kind of got that. We're implicating the truth of if the universal is true, then its particular that carries the same quality is also true. And that's going to be the same over here. If this is true, then we know that that's true. Okay? So he'll give some examples here. If it's true that all Christians are God's children, is it also true that some Christians are God's children? Yeah. Flows by necessity. Okay. And here's an example of sub-implication between an E and an O statement. No logicians are poets. If that's true, then would it be true that some logicians are not poets? If none of them are poets, would it also be true that some of them are not? Yeah. It's a little bit more awkward in the negative, but you get it. Okay. If it is true that no logicians are poets, then it must be true that some are not poets. It is not possible for this O statement to be false. If the E statement is true, then the O statement must be true. On the square of opposition, the relationship of sub-implication can be pictured with two arrows on either side of the square going from top to bottom. The relationship of sub-implication has nothing to do with falsity. It is concerned solely with the implication of truth. There's no implication that we're considering in sub-implication. We're just simply considering if one is true, if the universal is true, its particular is also true. Okay? And that's easy enough to see. Then the last relationship that you have, so just what you're going to be drawing on your square of opposition when you get here, you're not going to be worried about the T to T, but just that this is sub-implication. Sub-implication. Now, we are also going to have a relationship. The next one we're going to do is super-implication, which is going to go this way. And just for ease, if it is false here, it's going to be false here. When you know the truth value of this kind of a statement, you can imply if this is false, then you know this these statements would also be false if they have the same subject and predicate. That's what's going to be taught in this lesson. And then you're done with the square of opposition. And then we can have fun. Okay. As we've learned, sub-implication is the implication of truth for one statement on the basis of the truth of another. In contrast to this, super-implication is the implication of falsity. With sub-implication, the inference is from a universal statement to a particular statement of the same quality, A to I and E to O. This relationship was pictured by vertical arrows on either side of the square of opposition, going from the top to bottom. In the relationship of super-implication, the arrow goes the other way, from an I statement to an A, or from an O to an E. In super-implication, given the falsity of a particular statement, the falsity of its corresponding universal is implied. In other words, the falsity of an A statement can be inferred from the falsity of the I statement. In the same way, the falsity of an E statement can be inferred from the falsity of an O statement. Here's an example. Some Christians are atheists. If that's false, then all Christians are atheists would also have to be false, right? Okay. This is straightforward. If it is false that some Christians are atheists, then it must be false that all of them are. Understanding the relationship between O and E statements is perhaps a little more difficult. If you say some dogs are not mammals is a false statement, then no dogs are mammals would also be false. Do you follow that? Yeah. So don't read the fact that the not is here. The falsehood is not coming in the fact that it's negative. The falsehood comes to the quality of that kind of a statement. Okay, so now you have, on the following page, just what we've done here is we have painted this all in, except that I didn't write super implication. But aside from the missing of those two words, do you want me to put that? Super implication, you've got it now, at least on one side. Okay, so there's your square of opposition. So we have a couple of minutes, so let's work through this exercise 16 together. In the following exercise, write the relationship that exists between the two given statements in the blank on the right. The order does not matter. The order does matter. So you're going to have the first statement, and then the second one is going to be the one considered after. So you're going to imply, if this is your first statement, you're going to imply from the second. If this is your first statement, you're going to imply to the second that way. That's what he's getting at. Okay. All cowboys are rough men. Some cowboys are not rough men. So what do we have? What kind of statements are those? It's an A and A to O. An A to O. That's right. Do you see? Some cowboys are not rough men. Is an O statement. Okay, so that's a relationship of contradiction. Very good. Okay, some ladies are not rude women. No ladies are rude women. That's O to E, so what's the relationship there? Super implication. And so that means if it's false that some ladies are not rude, then you could show that no ladies are rude is also a false statement. Okay, all Christians are forgiven sinners. Some Christians are forgiven sinners. A to I. And we have sub-implication. Very good. No Christians are Muslims. Some Christians are not Muslims. E to O. And we have sub-implication, very good. Okay, all French fries are greasy foods, or food. No French fries are greasy food. Contrariety. A to E, that's right. So that would be a contrariety. And some pictures are beautiful art. That's an A. And some pictures are not beautiful art. That would, no. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Subcontrariety. Subcontrariety. That's not an A. That's a I. I to O. I was thinking all pictures are beautiful art. Gosh. Yeah, that's bad when your teacher's giving you bad information. Okay, 7. Some atheists are irrational men. No atheists are irrational men. It's an I to E, and that is, you following, mister? Okay, good. All 8th graders are brilliant logicians. Some 8th graders are brilliant logicians. A to I, that's sub-implication. Very good. Okay, number 9, all violinists are right-handed players. Some violinists are not right-handed players. A to O and contradiction. Okay, some feminists are feminine. All feminists are feminine. Okay. Super implication. So, yeah. Is it true that some feminists are feminine? That's a false statement, right? So if that's a false statement, then we can imply the falsehood of the. Yeah. Okay. All Democrats are Republicans.
That's false.
Yeah. But what kind of statement is that? A. And then some Democrats are not Republicans. Oh, so you see how the contradiction is there? You notice that you know where the falsehood is, and then is it true that some Democrats are not Republicans? Yeah, in fact, it's true that all Democrats are not Republicans. Okay, at least by title. Okay, all bards are storytellers. Some bards are storytellers. A to I, and that is sub-implication. All right. Okay, this week after, like on Wednesday, try to do exercise 17 where you draw in everything and see what you can do by retaining this through here. All right, let's do the next one down though. In the following problems, assume that the first statement in each set is true. Then determine the truth value of each remaining statement in the set. Circle T if it is true and F if it is false. And if the truth value can be determined, 2 points for each. So if all students are young people, that is a true statement. We know the value of that, right? Okay, if that's true, then what could you conclude from no students are young people? That would be a false statement. Yeah?
It's not true that all students are young people.
That's why he's not saying these are true statements. He's saying we assume that it is a true statement in the exercise. Yeah. Okay. So if that was a true statement, then no students are young based upon that would be a false statement. And then some students are young people. Could we have an inference from that? And that would be true by sub-implication, right? Because no students are young, then some students are young. If that no students are young is false, then that one would have to be true, right? By form. Are you tracking? Okay, do you get it? Is there some cloudiness back there in the back row? Second back row. Are you? You got it? I'm talking to you two. Not you two, those two. The man and the woman who shall remain nameless. You got it? Okay. It looked like there might have been a question over there. Okay, no angels are demons. If that's true, no angels are demons, then can we conclude something about some angels are demons? That would be a false statement. And if some angels are not demons, can we draw any conclusion from that? True. And how do we know that that's true?
Because it says that no angels or demons.
Yeah. From an I to an O. Not from E to O, but from an I to an O, right? But I mean, no, what I mean is between the some angels are demons and then the conclusion some angels are not demons, the relationship between those two would be subcontrariety, right? Where both could be true, but they can't both be false. Okay, so if it's proven, some are, then it would have to be true that some are not. Is that right? They cannot both be false. They can't both be false here. So if this one here is false, then that one can't be false as well.
But if you go from an E to an I, and you're assuming the E is true, then therefore the some SRP, the I would be false, and therefore the I and O would both have to be false.
No. Just the opposite. I'm sorry. If this is true, we know this is false.
Yes.
And in subcontrariety, they cannot both be false. So if that's false, you can't have this one as false.
So that one would have to be false, that one would have to be true.
Correct. Do you follow it now? Do you see? I know it's a lot in the mind, but do you follow how that goes? Everybody nods? Okay, we'll go another one. Some computers are word processors. If that is true, all computers are word processors. Can we draw any conclusion about that? If it's true here, can we say anything about the... Yeah. So this is where subcontrariety and subimplication and superimplication come into play. If this is true, superimplication only speaks of falsity. If this is false, then we can imply that the falsity there. But if this is true, we can't conclude that that's true. There's no implication of truth going up, right? So we can't determine whether the A statement is true or not. We don't have enough between those two. But now, some computers are word processors. Then no computers are word processors. That's false. I to E. Okay, so now if this is false, if this is true, then this is false. Again, if this is false, this could be false, right? But we can't have both being true. Yeah. It could be true or it could be false. You just have no way of knowing that universal in